Principles Show Daily Podcast by and for you.
All right, everybody, strap in because today we are going deep on Russia and their AI plans. And let me tell you, they are not playing around. We're basing this deep dive mainly on this really interesting article we found. It's on the BRICS joint website. And it's all about this big international AI conference they just held. AI Journey, it was called. And get this, Putin himself was there giving a big speech. So you know they're taking this seriously.
Yeah, that's definitely a sign that this is way up there on their list of priorities.
Right. And it's not like they're just trying to catch up to everyone else.
Yeah.
You know, this article makes it super clear that they want to be leading the whole world in AI.
Yeah, they're not satisfied with just playing catch-up. They want to be calling the shots.
Exactly. And, you know, it's interesting how they talk about this idea of...
Oh, yeah, worldview sovereignty.
Worldview sovereignty.
Yeah.
So it's like they're saying that their AI should reflect Russia's own values and language and culture. Like, it's not just about being technically advanced. It's almost like it needs to be ideologically aligned with Russia, too.
Yeah, you could almost say they want a Russian algorithm, not just like a better algorithm in general, but one that's uniquely Russian.
Wow, that's a pretty bold idea. I wonder, like, what that would even look like in practice.
Honestly, it's a little vague at this point. The article does mention their version of ChatGPT, GigChat it's called, but they don't really explain how it's fundamentally different because of this whole worldview sovereignty thing.
Okay, so they're big on ideas, but they're showing off some really cool tech in this article, too.
Yeah.
Like, they're already testing out driverless tractor trailers on a major highway. This is happening now. It's not sci-fi anymore.
Oh, yeah, and that's just one part of their bigger plan. They call it unmanned logistics corridors. The idea is to link up Moscow and St. Petersburg with these totally autonomous trucking routes. Think about how much that would change the economy if it actually worked.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. And the article also talks about how they're really pushing forward with this, what's it called?
Generative AI.
Generative AI, right? So, like, AI that can create images and videos and even designs for 3D printed parts.
You know, like industrial grade stuff. Imagine how much faster the design process could be if you had AI doing it for you.
It's crazy to think about.
And that speed is really the key for them. They see that as their big advantage. If you don't need human designers and engineers, then you can potentially produce things way faster.
That's a really interesting approach. But it can't all be about the technology itself, can it?
Yeah.
You also need the people who can actually build and use these systems.
Oh, absolutely.
And I noticed the article mentioned something called a T-Bank program.
Yes, that's a really important part of their strategy. It's basically a corporate education program for students and people working in IT. So they're building up their workforce for the future at the same time that they're developing the tech.
So they're thinking long term.
Exactly.
They're playing the long game. It's like they're playing 3D chess while everyone else is still on checkers. But then there's this weird tension in the article. Because on the one hand, Putin is calling for more collaboration with other countries. But on the other hand, they're really emphasizing this whole worldview sovereignty thing.
Right.
So how do those two things fit together?
Well, remember, this article is published on the BRICS website, and BRICS stands for...
Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
Right.
It's a group of big up-and-coming economies.
Exactly. So maybe Putin is specifically calling for collaboration with those countries.
Like a kind of AI alliance between them?
Maybe. Or it could be that he wants to work with other countries too, but only if they understand that Russia is going to do things their own way.
So basically they're saying, hey, let's work together, but we're going to do things the Russian way.
Yeah, something like that.
So do you think other countries, especially like the US and China, are they going to be okay with that? Are they going to want to work with Russia on those terms?
It's tough to say, really. I mean, there's a lot of tension in the world right now, but even though Russia is saying they want to do things their way, they're still admitting that they need to work with other countries to some extent.
Yeah.
No one can figure out AI all by themselves. It's a global thing.
Yeah, that's true. But this whole worldview sovereignty thing is still kind of strange. It makes me wonder if they're really serious about collaborating, or if it's more about forming alliances with countries that agree with them.
Yeah, there's definitely a strategic element to it. It's something we need to keep an eye on as AI keeps getting more powerful. Imagine a world where different regions develop their own kinds of AI based on their own values. That could have huge consequences.
Yeah, like how would that affect global trade or international relations? or even just cultural exchange,
Right. It's like we'd be entering a whole new phase of globalization.
where technology is shaped by culture and politics.
Exactly.
That's a pretty massive shift.
And it brings us back to what we're talking about here. Russia's ambitions for AI. They're not just trying to build cool tech, they're trying to build a whole new vision of the future. A future where they're in charge.
And they're putting their money where their mouth is. Like this T-Bank program we mentioned. They're training tons of people to work in AI.
That's a major investment.
This shows how serious they are about this.
Yeah, they're not just focused on the algorithms, they're focused on developing human capital too. They want their whole society to be ready for a future where AI is everywhere.
So it's not just about robots and automation. It's
Yeah.
about transforming their entire society.
Yeah, they're aiming really high. Honestly, I think other countries should be paying more attention to what they're doing. Russia's playing the long game.
Do you think this whole worldview sovereignty thing could actually give them an advantage? Like if they're building AI that's specifically designed for their own country, their own problems, maybe that makes them more flexible.
It's possible. I mean, think about it. If their AI is built to deal with their infrastructure
Yeah.
and their geography and their culture, then it could give them an edge in those areas.
That makes sense. So what does all this mean for us, the people listening to this?
I think the main takeaway is that Russia is serious about AI. This isn't just some news story. It's a sign that things are changing on a global level. And we need to be aware of those changes.
Yeah.
We need to understand who the players are and what they want and what it all means for our own countries.
It's like we're at a fork in the road. One path leads to a world where everyone works together on AI, with shared standards and open communication. The other path leads to a world where AI is divided, with different regions developing their own separate systems.
Yeah. And the decisions we make now, the investments we prioritize, the partnerships we form, those will determine which path we end up taking.
So it's not just about Russia. It's about the whole future of AI.
Right. And that's something that affects all of us.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about Russia's AI ambitions and the potential for both collaboration and competition, and what it all means for the future of technology. Man, we've really gone deep on this, haven't we? All these different angles on Russia's AI strategy, their goals, their challenges. It's obvious they see AI as like this total game changer, not just a cool new tech, but a way to reshape their whole country.
Yeah, and they're not afraid to spend big to make that happen. I mean, we talked about the T-Bank program, how they're training a whole generation of AI specialists, but they're also pouring money into research and building new infrastructure and making deals with companies. It's like their whole government is behind this.
Makes me wonder, are other countries doing enough to keep up?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, the U.S. has a huge tech industry, but is it as focused and coordinated as what's happening in Russia?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The U.S. is really good at the basic research side of things, and they have lots of venture capitalists funding new startups. But Russia seems to be doing something different. The government is much more hands-on. They're really steering the direction of AI development.
So it's less Silicon Valley and more, what do you even call it?
Kremlinville?
Kremlin Valley.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
So a totally different approach.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. It's not just about the tech itself. It's about the way they're going about it. Could this become a model for other countries?
I guess we'll have to wait and see how it plays out for them. There's still a lot we don't know. Like we talked about GigaChat, their answer to ChatGPT, but the article was pretty vague on the details.
Yeah, they're big on the big picture stuff, but it's hard to tell how advanced their AI actually is.
Right, like anyone can make bold claims.
Exactly. The real test is whether they can turn these ideas into reality.
And how all this fits into the whole global picture. Like Putin talks about collaborating with other countries, but you got to wonder how genuine that is, given all the tensions in the world right now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a puzzle. Is it sincere? Is it just a tactic? Is it a little of both? It's hard to say for sure.
But it does show how AI has this
Double-edged sword kind of quality.
Exactly. Like on the one hand, it could be this amazing tool for solving problems and connecting people. But on the other hand, it could also be used to control people or to spread misinformation.
Right. It all depends on who's using it and what their goals are.
Which is why these kinds of discussions are so important.
We need to understand all the different ways AI could develop and what that means for the future.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick one big takeaway for our listeners, what would it be?
I think it's that AI is way more complex and way more important than most people realize. It's not just a competition to build the best tech. It's a competition to shape the future. And the choices we make today will have consequences for years to come.
So we need to pay attention and think critically about all this.
Absolutely.
Wow, you really nailed that.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Couldn't agree more. So that's it for today's deep dive, folks. We've explored Russia's AI ambitions, the potential for both cooperation and conflict, and what it all means for the future of technology. Thanks for joining us.